we will start your topic. Please bear with us till then. Just 2 more minutes. Thank you. Okay. Good afternoon, everyone. We welcome you to another session organized by AMTOI for its members and their staff. And we have with us AMTOI Honorary Secretary, Mr. Harish Lalwani, and the training session head. So I would request you to say a few words before I introduce our speaker today.
Definitely. Thanks, Vasant. Good afternoon, everyone. And thank you for joining this session. This session is basically on the BIC code and check digit. And this has been explained to you even on the chats and the emails that have been sent. So if you have any questions, my request would be that please make sure that they go into the Q&A section only and do not post it in the chat section. It'll be very difficult for us to be able to collate all that. And I'm sure, you all will all be kind enough to ensure that all the questions are in the Q&A section only. So thank you, welcome, and I hope you have a good knowledge session today. Vasant, back to you.
Thank you, Arifbhai. Okay, I would like to welcome Mr. Siddhant Lalwani and give us introduction of his. He's a third generation entrepreneur with a distinguished academic background, holding a BSc in Material Science and Engineering from Carnegie Mellon University, USA. His expertise lies in intersections of logistics, technology, chemistry, and safety, where he leverages to lead the digital transformation of Sun Logistics. Under his leadership, Sun Logistics has introduced specialized tanks, containers tailored to have stringent requirements of transporting highly corrosive and hazardous liquids and gas cargoes, ensuring compliance and safety in every unit. During COVID pandemic, Siddhant demonstrated his commitment to national service by creating training material for the transportation of liquid medical oxygen. This initiative, endorsed by Logistics Skill Council, trained over 5,000 drivers, enhancing safety in critical medical logistics. He is also the author of Transporting Dangerous Goods by Sea certification program for the Logistics Skill Council in India, making high quality training available to the industry at economical rates. As a dangerous goods vanning survey consultant, Siddhant collaborates closely with shippers promoting grassroots level safety and regulatory compliance. Now I hand over the session to Siddhant. Siddhant, welcome to your. Okay, you've done a few sessions, I think, during in physical at the AMTOI office, but this is the first session and which will be followed by many more to come. And it's over to you, Siddhant. Welcome once again.
Thank you, Vasant, and thank you to the AMTOI team for this platform, and thank you for everyone for attending this session. I'm sure it'll be a worthwhile and interesting knowledge session. I think we should just get into it. There we go. So, a little bit of our plan for today. I'll introduce myself, but Vasant's already done a great job for that, so I don't know how much I can add. Then we'll do a slight introduction of the motivation behind this session. We'll talk about container numbers, we'll talk about the check digit, the BIC, the ISO standard 6346, and how all of this is used in our day to day applications and day to day shipping. So, a little bit about me. I'm the director at Sun Logistics. We specialize in transportation of dangerous goods. We offer dedicated tanks for specialty chemicals. We also provide tank container spare parts and accessories. And I've authored the Transporting Dangerous Goods by Sea course for the Logistics Skill Council of India. Vasant has told you more about me, but this is a brief introduction. So let's get going. So the goals for this session. So the idea behind this session is that we want to decode what the container numbers mean. They're more than just numbers. These codes are actually the backbone of information transfer in international shipping. And knowing how to read them will help you understand more about the container without having to physically see the container. Then we learn about BIC or the BIC. BIC is where these codes come from. There is an organization that manages them called BIC. This is the central registry for all container numbers and container codes. And we'll go one level higher and we look into the ISO 6346. This is the international standard that makes sure all containers are numbered correctly. And this is the international standard that has empowered BIC to be the central registry of container numbers. So I wanted to share a very interesting quote written in a book called The Box. This is a book about how the shipping container was invented and the changes that it created in the global economy. So the container is at the core of a highly automated system for moving goods from anywhere to anywhere with a minimum of cost and complication on the way. The container made shipping cheap, and by doing so, changed the shape of the world economy through standardization. Basically, now that the containers are always of the same size, we see that it becomes cheaper to ship around the world. And similar to that, all things about a container are standardized. So the sizes of the container are standardized. The specifications, including the design of the locks on the corners, the design of the doors, the size of the forklift pockets, the distance between the corrugations of the wall, are all standardized. And of course, the method of identification is also standardized. The reason behind this standardization is so that there are no surprises in the supply chain and everyone knows how to handle a standardized container. Similarly, with the big identification codes, everyone knows how to understand details of a container by looking simply at the container number. So, container numbers. Okay, so I'm gonna do a few interesting magic tricks here. So let's look at the first image on the right. We have this container. It's got a number OPDU 2052714. I can tell you with a good amount of certainty that this is a CMA CGM container. We'll find out how I know that later. But let's take a look at this. CMA CGM is a big company. They probably produce thousands of containers every year. So if OPDU 2052714 is a container that exists, then OPDU 2052715 would be the next container in this series that has been manufactured. But I can guarantee that OPDU 2052715 does not exist anywhere in the world. I'll show you how we do that in the near future. Okay, let's look at the second image now, the one on the right over here. So the lower image. This is an older container. It's been through. It seems like it's been through a lot of torture. The decals are falling off. The number is unclear. Can anyone figure out whether that's an 8 or a 3 on the container? I can tell you with 100% certainty it's a 3, even though you can barely make out what that digit is. So let's try and learn by observation. Here's 6 containers. I've taken out the container numbers from the image for our reference. So we have TTNU 998109 99810908 and the rest of them. Now, if you see the last digit of all these container numbers, it's always marked specially. It's either highlighted or has a box around it, or it seems different than the other digits. So I've recreated that in the highlight in our list. You can see that the last number is highlighted in green. So let's work with these 6 numbers and see what we can understand just by observation. Right? So here are our numbers. First thing we can see, it's always 11 characters. It's always 11 numbers or letters long. Then we always see that there's 4 letters in the start of this. They keep changing, but there's some patterns within that as well. So the letter combinations, they always end in a U. Then they are followed by 7 digits. And like I said earlier, the last digit seems special. There's something interesting going on there. Why else would it be highlighted? So let's try and break it down. So this is the structure of a container number. These are the secrets hidden within. The first 3 letters are the owner's prefix. So that is, we'll get into what that is in the next slide. The fourth letter, the U, is in equipment category. So that tells you what type of equipment that it is. Then we have a serial number of 6 digits, and then our special digit comes back. So our special digit is called the check digit. So let's look at the owner's prefix. Now, the owner's prefix is 3 capital letters that are from the English alphabet that indicate the owner or the principal operator of this container. Now, this combination of letters must be registered with the International des Containers du Transport Intermodal, the Bureau International des Containers du Transport Intermodal, BIC, which is just French for the the International Bureau of Containers. We'll learn more about the BIC in the next few slides. So, some things to note. A single container owner can have multiple prefixes. Sometimes container owners do this to segregate inventory, such as a certain prefix used for reefer containers, a certain prefix used for specialty containers like flat racks. But that's left up to the owner what they choose to register with the BIC organization. Now, these prefixes must be renewed yearly with the BIC so that the BIC knows that you are an active participant in the supply chain. So over here, I have some screenshots from the BIC website where you can check a container owner prefix. So you can see that ECMU is CMACGM. You can see that TTNU is Triton Container International. Every person who owns or operates a container will have a prefix or should have a prefix that is registered with BIC. So that's our first 3 letters. That mystery, I can say, is solved. Now let's look at the fourth letter, the U. Okay, so there's 3 possible values for the fourth letter. It can be U, which is all freight containers. It can be J, which is detachable container related equipment. Now, this is sometimes external gensets that go into temperature controlled containers, for example. And then the last option is Z, which is for trailers and chassis. Currently, all the prefixes registered with BIC are ending in U. So the J and the Z category identifiers are pretty much unused, but there is a provision for them. So it's very unlikely that you will see a J or a Z in day-to-day container operations. Another caveat or thing to note here is that although this is not recognized by the BIC, sometimes R is used to designate a reefer container. This is done in certain jurisdictions, but like I said, this is not standard practice. It is something I wanted to share with you guys so that in case you see the R, you know what it's about. But like I said, this is not the approved usage of the prefix. So then we have the serial number, right? This is a standard serial number. It's a 6-digit number that the operator chooses. The operator is the ideal way to use it for the operators for them to make sure it is unique within their internal fleet, right? So for someone like a CMA, they would have their prefix, and then they would make sure those 6 digits stay unique internally. A lot of times, the equipment owners have secret codes inside these serial numbers. So, for example, with the specialized tank containers that we work with, certain containers that are specialized for carrying highly corrosive chloride cargoes always have the second digit as a 4. Now, this is, of course, an internal thing. No one needs to know about it, but these are some of the tricks and some of the things that different container operators use with their serial numbers. Okay, and now the magical check digit. Well, honestly, it's not magic, it's mostly math. So, before we go into how the check digit works, I have to do a little bit of school maths refreshers. I apologize. This will be brief. I know no one enjoys this. So, on the left over there, you'll see, I'm sure everyone has seen this before, but it is old school long division, right? The kind of division where you can't get a decimal point. So, here we're doing a long division of 6185 divided by 11. And I'm sure everyone remembers or slightly remembers how this works out. But we see the two important points. We get the quotient, which is the multiple of 11 that is the closest to 6185. And then we get the remainder, which is the leftover amount, right? So you've seen the normal division sign, which you can see over here on the first line. That gives you the quotient as an answer. There is a similar operator or a similar sign in mathematics that looks like a percentage sign, but it's called a modulus, which gives you the remainder of this operation. So whenever you see that percentage sign, just know it's the remainder of this long division calculation. And the next thing I need everyone to know, and this I think is a little more familiar with everybody, is exponents. So 2 raised to 5 is 2 times 2 times 2 times 2 times 2, which is 2 into 5. 5 twos, right? Multiplied by each other. 3 raised to 4 is 3 times 3 times 3 times 3. And that's your standard, raised to exponent calculation. One thing to note that I don't know if everyone remembers this from school, but any number raised to 0 is equal to 1. That's all the math you'll need. Don't worry about it. And now we'll go on to the actual check digit. Okay, so let's look at a container number. Now, as we've learned, container numbers are actually the 4 letters and the 6 serial numbers that are decided by the operator. The last digit, the check digit, is actually the result of a calculation, and it is not set by neither BIC nor the container operator. It is a result of a specific calculation that has to come out through the process that I'm showing here. So let's look at the process, right? We have our container number ECMU813843. Now, on the table on the left, you'll see I have the position marked out. This is literally the position that this character is in the container number. So we start with 0 as our first position, our 0th position, which is the E. Then we have the 1, which is C. On the second position is M. On the third position is U, so on and so forth, right? So our first step in figuring out the check digit is taking our position number, right, and putting that as the exponent to 2. So it'll be 2 raised to 0 is 1, 2 raised to 1 is 2. And similarly, we'll go down as 1, 2, 4, 6, 8, 16, 32, 64, 128, 256, 512. So this column, column A, is our multipliers. We'll need this for our next step. Then what we want to do is we have letters here. We can't multiply letters. So what we do is we take these letters and we substitute them with numbers. The substitution table is on your right, is on my right over here. You'll see it's very straightforward. A is equal to 10, B is equal to 12, C is equal to 13. You might notice that 11 is missing, and that is intentional. So 11 and all its multiples are not included here. So A is 10, B is 12. Similarly, K is 21, and L is 23. So we do this substitution to turn our letters into numbers. So E becomes 15, C becomes 13, M becomes 24, U becomes 32, right? And then all we have to do is multiply A, our column A, by column B, which gives us a list of numbers here. And then we add those up. So we get 4329. Now our magic modulus operator comes back, what I showed you earlier, the remainder from division. We apply the modulus 11. So we divide 4329 by 11 and we take the remainder. In this case, the remainder is 6, and that is our check digit. So that check digit is calculated through this process. So here's in a simplified version, that's just the steps. So like I said, container number position. First step is get the positions. Our positions start at 0 and end at 9, not 1 to 10, 0 to 9. Next step, calculate 2 raised to position. Right now, that's our column A in our previous slide. The step after that, convert all our letters to numbers. A is 10, B is 12, not 11, and then it's sequential, right? 11 and its multiples are not allowed in the conversion of letters to numbers. Multiply the results of our last two steps together and then add all of them up. And our check digit is the sum with modulus 11, or divided by 11 and the remainder. So what I want to do is I want to go back to my magic trick in the earlier slide of how I know this is 3 and not an 8. So the calculation that we did earlier was with a different container number. Now let's try it with this container number. Our guess is it's either a 3 or an 8, right? So I perform the steps that we discussed in our previous slide. We do the letter substitutions. We find the position. We raise 2 to the position number. We multiply the letters, the numbers, and the positions together. And we get, when we use 3, we get 3673 as the total. 3673 modulus 11 is 10. Now I picked this number on purpose actually. This is a small thing to remember, that when your remainder is 10, we treat it as 0 because it has to be a single digit. So the check digit, if we use 3 in this container number, is 0. If we look at the image, the check digit is actually 0. So we know that 3 is the correct one because the check digit is coming out correct in our calculation. If we misentered the number or misread the number, or we thought it was an 8, our check digit calculation on the right below me shows 3753. 3753 modulus 11 is 2. That means our check digit should have been a 2. The last digit should have been a 2 if this was an 8. So we know that the correct container number is EMCU 373680. Because if the container number was EMCU 873680, the last digit would not be 0, it would be a 2. Cool. So now you know how check digits work. It's not that complicated. It's all school level mathematics, but used in an interesting way. So now let's talk about the bureaucracy and the organizations that make sure this is possible and make sure this happens. So first of all, there's BIC. I mentioned them previously. The Bureau International des Containers et du Transport Intermodal, the International Bureau of Containers and Intermodal Transport. So, what is the mission of BIC? BIC ensures that containers are identified with a unique ID worldwide. So, you will never see two containers with the same number at the same place at the same time, right? Because if container numbers were not unique, I think everyone has been working in shipping here long enough to know what kind of chaos that would cause. There's so many containers that are moving around the world, and not being able to identify a container quickly and immediately would be a huge problem. So I think a lot of us need to thank BIC for reducing our day-to-day headaches. Now, BIC is the only registrar of container numbers. So you do not get a prefix unless BIC gives it to you. And this role as a registrar was actually given to BIC by the International Standards Organization. It is encoded in the standard that a BIC owner's prefix is mandatory for you to create a container number. So, in fact, it is at a point today where most customs documentation, most international shipping documentation, they actually check with BIC if this is a valid container number. So, if you're ever in a position where you're thinking, okay, I've bought all these containers, why should I register them? A container number is a container number. Just know that without doing this, you can cause so much chaos and confusion down the line, because you might conflict with somebody else and your containers might be swapped with somebody else. And I think the cost of registration at BIC is nothing compared to a swapped container and a misdelivered cargo. So what does BIC give us? What can we use BIC for? So first of all, BIC, like we saw previously, BIC gives us a searchable database of all container owner prefixes. So if you ever see a container owner prefix, you can look it up on the BIC website. There's a screenshot right here. And that'll give you the exact detail of who the operator or principal owner of this container is. The other thing that BIC provides us is a list of cancelled prefixes. So this is very interesting, right? Because this is a situation where somebody has purchased containers or manufactured containers, registered them for sea usage, and then decided that they no longer want their prefix. So that implies that they no longer want to operate these containers. This is useful in a risk management scenario. I'll explain how that's useful later. And finally, the e-BIC services. Now, I mentioned previously that customs bodies, governments, shipping lines, operators, they all use BIC services to validate a container number. Not only to see if the check digit calculation is correct, but also to see if this is a registered container and that the owner of the container is actually an active entity who they can get in touch with. So the e-BIC services is one of BIC's biggest contributions to our ecosystem, right? Like, if you cannot verify a container on e-BIC, then you would have a lot of difficulty getting that SOC box onto a vessel. You would have a lot of difficulty with customs at many different ports around the world, because they don't know who the exact owner of this equipment is. So they don't know whether they can trust that this equipment will, for example, follow the rules of staying in the country for a fixed amount of time, because they have nobody they can reach out to and say, hey, this is your box, please get it out of here. Or, hey, this is your box and it is damaged or it is lost, right? You need a central registrar to make sure that these things function. So, where does BIC get its powers from? right? So the ISO 6346, freight containers, coding, identification, and marking. This is the international standard that has empowered the BIC to be the central registrar. But it also does a lot of very other interesting things. Now, like I had mentioned in my initial few slides, standardization is very important for efficiency, and if we don't have efficiency, then we cannot operate at a global scale like this. We cannot ship a container from anywhere to anywhere with minimal cost and minimal complexity. And that is our goal. So the reason these standardizations are there is because now everybody knows the details of what is on a container. So ISO 6346 gives us the container number regulations that we have discussed already. Those include the operator prefix, the check digit calculation, and of course empowering BIC. Other things in this standard which are very interesting is the coding system for container size and type. Now everyone knows 22GP. If you go into the ISO standards, actually 22GP is a group code. It is not a specific container code. More likely, you will see something like 22G1, which is the actual code for this equipment type. Now, I'm sure everyone has seen these kind of markings, and including the markings below, like gross weight, tear weight. Why are they always in the same place with the same spacing, the same font? We always know that if we look at a container and I need to know the tear weight, I can tell you exactly where it is without even thinking. That again is a result of ISO 6346. It tells us where the physical marks have to be placed on the container. So I'm sure you guys can see by now that like this kind of standardization is leading to the efficiency that we have in our industry today. And without it, we would all be very lost because people would be naming containers in a way that conflicts with somebody else. There's a chance for swapping containers when that wasn't the correct thing to do. We don't know where to look for tear weight, max gross, all of these important informations if they were all put in different places. So this is the whole idea behind the ISO standards for container marking, labeling, and numbering. So we have all of this stuff, and we have all these standards and this math and these calculations and all, but like what do we do with it? Like why is it important for our day-to-day operations? Why should we care, basically? So I'm sure you've all seen a password field like the one on the left. You have your validations. Some places have more annoying validations than others. So on your right, we can recreate this with a container number field. So most of the ERPs and softwares that you use will actually be doing this check in the background. So just like you can, if you try to put in a email ID and don't have an at the rate sign, you get an error. Similarly, if you put a container number in and its check digit shows that the number is wrong, you will get a validation error saying this is not a valid container number. Now, I'm sure everyone here has mistyped a container number at some point or the other. And frankly, I definitely have emails where I wish I had this built into my computer that stopped me from sending the wrong container number and sending a correction email later. But besides us people who sit in the office or type in a computer, we have our operations people who are doing this kind of data entry in difficult situations. And in those situations, having something that immediately flags a mistake is essential. As you saw, this calculation is very simple, especially for a computer. So it's not like he has to enter a container number, submit it, have it go to a server somewhere for validation. He can immediately, within a millisecond, know that there is a mistake in this data entry without having to consult with any third party or checking with BIC or anything like that. And that in itself is a valuable and extremely useful tool. On a bigger picture, if you ever receive an incorrect container number and you go back and you say, hey, this isn't passing our check digit calculation. That is pointing to maybe a small issue where somebody mistyped something in an email, or it could be a sign of a bigger issue, right? Like it could be that, oh no, the container number submitted on a manifest is wrong, and I have to now do a lot of work to correct this problem. Similarly, I have submitted the wrong container number on a customs form. That is a much much bigger issue than, oh sorry, we'll fix my email. So the other thing that we can look at is that if the prefix is expired, I showed you the list of recently expired prefixes on the BIC website. If a prefix is expired and it's one of the containers that you are carrying or looking to purchase or is in your fleet somehow, then perhaps that's an unknown liability, right? You don't know who the owner of that container is. You don't know where the person offering that container for shipment got that container. And if it's not tied to him on any public database or in any way that can be tied to him, there is a chance they might leave the container and walk off, and then it's your problem. This is, of course, a worst case scenario, but it's a risk assessment, right? And this is information. So any information can be useful in figuring out what our liabilities can be in a situation. And finally, these prefixes, the owner prefixes, are very useful in equipment recovery and control. If you find a container in the condition as is on the third image, and you are in the shipping industry, so you care about your fellow your shipping fraternity, you could look up the container prefix and get in touch with the owner of the container saying, hey, this is your container. Similarly, law enforcement can do the same, customs officials can do the same. And lately, I don't know how many people have seen this, but we've seen this before. There are email blasts that go out from shipping lines and carriers saying this prefix is no longer allowed in our vessel. Or even more interestingly, there are certain times where it is the carrier's prefix and they say serial number X to Y is no longer accepted because either those containers have been removed from the fleet or they are no longer seaworthy and they're worried about somebody trying to get them on board anyways, or for a variety of reasons. I don't operate a shipping line, I don't know the exact reason, but it's useful to have identifications that are universal, that can be shared with everybody, and have some kind of container blacklist, which is kind of what ends up being formed in these scenarios. And I think that's the end of my presentation. I hope I've been able to share some useful knowledge with you guys, and we're open to any questions.
Yeah, thank you, Siddhant. That was an amazing session, very informative, and I'm sure a lot of people didn't realize how important check digit is. And I'm sure they all realize now that it is going to be a very, very important thing for them to learn and for them to ensure that they now know how to take things forward in their documentation and always know the right container, at least the right container number. So yeah, it makes a lot of sense. Thank you so much. I just have I have a comment from one of our past
I was about to
presidents,
say that, yes.
and he says this is an extraordinary session, Siddhant. The topic is fascinating and gives insight that many of us were lacking. AWB number and IMC BIC code numbers function as critical logistical identifiers, ensuring standardized tracking, minimizing errors through check digits, and enabling seamless global transport operations. While the former applies to air cargo, the shipping and shipping containers, their underlying design principles remain strikingly similar. And it comes from our Mr. Shantanu Bhatkamkar, who is a well-known leader of our industry, someone who I think more than 70% of the industry treats as their guru.
Guru.
So I would say it is a fantastic compliment for you. While saying that, I do not see any questions in the Q&A box. So I can only tell you one thing, that either your session was excellent, that people understood everything, or maybe some people do not want to put in questions. But I need to state this very clearly. It's never, no question is ever wrong. Only an answer can be wrong. A question cannot be wrong. So please ask your question, and it'll always help you learn more. Maybe you're not asking in this session, but in any session that we do, we request everyone to ensure that they ask questions.
So
I can have a wrong answer, but you can't have a wrong question.
just wanted to interrupt you there. Thank you, Shantanu sir. I appreciate your feedback, and a compliment from you is worth a lot to me.
So I guess we do not have
Okay,
any
I would
questions.
like to ask a
Vasant, yeah,
question. I would like
sure.
to ask a question to Siddhant. Again, a layman's question, being in the industry for so long, but yes, still after your session, I think even I got to learn a lot of things which are pretty new. Uh, we have big carriers, the huge ones, the gigantic ones like MSC and Merck's and so on and on. Each one has got, I don't know, there's no number of what are the fleet they own. A layman's question again is, in spite of having such a huge fleet, the container number, that sequence remains only that 6 digit. How how do they maintain that?
So you're saying are 6 digits enough?
Yeah, no, because the count goes on millions and millions of containers.
Hang on, let me look this up. Right.
I'm sure a lot of them are thinking about the same, but maybe people are a
I
bit
understand.
embarrassed
I
or
understand what you
ashamed to
mean.
ask.
Uh,
So I said,
Hang
let me
on.
do that.
There is a mathematical way to solve your problem. So the total number of 6 digit combinations, right, that
Right.
exist if of numbers without repetition is, let's see, it is 100 million numbers that you can form
Okay.
mathematically.
Mathematically.
On top of
Okay.
that, the identifier also adds to the whole calculation, right? The original equipment identifier, the letters.
Correct.
So essentially, what that's saying is each letter has about 100 million containers that, or each owner's prefix has about 100 million containers that they can push out. And like I said, you can have multiple prefixes as one owner.
Correct.
So CMA
Correct.
has about three different prefixes. I don't think they have 300 million containers out in the world. That might be a little too much,
True,
but they
true, true.
probably use them for a different reason. So if
Abs-
we exhaust the total number of containers in the world, I don't think there's that much cargo.
True, true, true. So it's just that, okay.
Yeah,
So
I wanted
there
to do
are
the math and tell you a precise
no, the
number. Right?
possibilities itself, what you explained, that says it all.
Hmm.
What all possibilities and so many options to maintain that 6 digit is the count what you say. I
So
think that answers it all.
your 4 digit PIN number that you choose for your phone will
Correct.
probably be different to everybody else in this room.
True,
So
true,
based on
true,
that,
true.
what happens with
Same.
six, right?
Absolutely, absolutely. Thank you so much. It's just that I said a lot of people might be thinking this, but I said let me uh, love to have some more questions. I'm sure people might be. You have so many attendance, people attending.
So we have one question that has just come in from Arvind Jadhav. If many of the container numbers are declared illegal, why are they not removed from these systems?
Okay, so a container number is not technically declared illegal, but I understand what you mean. That there's lots of times where a shipping line or a carrier might say that I don't want to carry container numbers with this prefix, or this series of containers is not allowed, right? So it is a choice of a carrier to not carry that. Either way, if a container prefix is no longer valid by BIC, it is again up to the carrier whether they want to choose to carry that container or not. It's not that if a container prefix is no longer recognized by BIC means the containers disappear. The physical objects do still exist, and it's up to the line if they want to take that risk without the registration information available on BIC anymore.
Must every operator be registered with BIC by Mr. Adi Aga?
Okay, so the ISO standard says that you must be. The what do you call it? Your customs officials all over the world say that you must be. The carriers usually say that you must be, but if you choose not to, you can not to, right? Like it's a community enforced kind of situation. There's no international police that says you are a carrier, then you don't have your prefix. But shipping is a communal business. We all work with each other. And if one of us does not follow the rules, then the system breaks and our efficiency goes. So it's not cost effective to not be registered with BIC. And like I mentioned previously, if you're not registered with BIC, you might have a clash. You might put a container number that is already in the system and someone else's container. And if those get swapped, your cost of registration is nothing compared to the amount you lose trying to fix that error.
But the other reason can also be that, when you are an NVOCC and you have purchased second-hand containers, I'm sure that is what the whole question would be all about.
Mhm.
So if you do that, then, you can still use those container numbers if the person who has sold it to you has no objection to you using them. So that is
Right.
also something. Yeah.
So at the time of container sale, usually what ends up happening is the person selling the container usually has a BIC registration, because usually when you go to manufacture a container, they ask you for a BIC registered prefix. So at the time of sale, most people will either A, take off their container numbers and tell you to get new ones, or B, they will give you that container with their prefix and ensure that they do not repeat that serial number again. So that's, I think, a deal that you make with the person that you're purchasing the containers from. A well informed purchase would include a discussion about what are we going to do about the prefix and the BIC code.
Okay. We have one more question. Slowly, the questions are trickling in, and and I'm so glad that people are putting their questions forward. We've got something from Preeti Dwivedi. So, how can we check whether it is registered, as frauds can happen with container numbers?
So your first check should always be our magic number, the check digit, right? If you don't have to do the check digit calculation yourself. There's many tools online that take away all the math, and you don't have to do any of that crazy stuff. It's good that you understand how it's done. But if the check digit makes sense and the container number makes sense, then you can start to look at whether it is something to whether you want to check the actual owner's prefix. And like I showed you from the big website screenshots, you can look up an owner's prefix anywhere in the world at any time. It's public information. It'll also tell you whether that prefix is valid or not valid, right? So these are just indicators as to whether the container you're buying is in good standing. If the check digit is wrong, I would suggest stay away, because something fishy is happening there. If the owner's prefix is expired with BIC, then I think that's something that can be worked around, whether you want to register it yourself or you ask the owner to re-register. That's not a huge red flag, but it is something to consider. And if you're speaking with the owner directly, then not such a big deal. If there's a third party involved, perhaps there's a little bit more research and risk analysis that needs to be done there.
So, Siddhant, can we request you to create like a small formula or something that we can put onto our AMTOI website for our members to download, for them to make it easier to do this check digit thing?
Yeah, sure, not a problem at all. I can share it with you right now.
Thank you. So if you can do that, we will ensure that we put it on the website, and people can download it and do their check digit calculations and verification.
Mhm.
Thanks. So now we have another question coming in from Sabrish Nair. Is the BIC registration fee a one-time payment or an annual charge? You'll have to go on the BIC website, register and check that. we won't be able to answer the questions on
I cannot
Commercial.
discuss finance.
Commercial.
yeah.
It's a very simple form, though. You can take a look. It's quite self-explanatory. I can put a link if you want.
So yeah, that's it. I guess we have no more questions now. We had four. We've answered all four. So yeah, Vasant, back to you.
Yep. On behalf of AMTOI, on behalf of all our participants, would like to thank Siddhant for. I think this was something other than the normal sessions. This was something very different topic, and which I'm sure people have a lot of questions at the back of their mind, but maybe they are hesitant because
But they
this
can
such.
send these questions to our AMTOI info@amtoi.org.
Yes, I was just going to say
So
that. So
I'm sorry I
any.
had to take everyone back to school maths class. I wasn't
No,
very.
no. Please share all your questions on mail to this ID, and the same will be collated and replied. That's not an issue at all. And again, Siddhant, thank you once again. And with the type of knowledge and exposure what you have shown us, we're going to keep bothering you again and again. Just be ready for that. I
Thank you for the
know.
platform, sir.
Yes, no, it will be because we would like you to share your knowledge with all our members, all the staff who are working in their office. It will be a great thing. Okay, again, to all the participants, thank you so much. And I would like to remind you all that very soon we have another session coming up, which is on the 4th of March, which is again on something new, which is the government has just into customs are introduced, which is called the SCMTR, CSN filing, Sea Cargo Manifest and Transshipment Regulations, which is on the 4th. And the links have already been shared for registration. And we would request all of you to please register yourself. It's from 4 p.m. to 5:30 p.m. on the 4th of March. And okay, that's it from our side. Thank you, all of
And this
you. Thank
session
you,
will be
Siddhant.
available after some time on our website for
Yes,
people to go through it again. So you can always have a look on the link. And once Siddhant shares the formula with us, we will also put that onto our website, and our members can download it and ensure that they have verification of the check digit.
yes. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Have a
Thank you
good day.
all.
Thanks,
Yeah,
Siddhant.
have a good
Thanks,
day.
everyone.
Thanks, Siddhant, once again. Thank you. Thanks. Bye. See you.